Tyrone, appreciate you taking time out of your schedule today. I know there was some miscommunication with respect to the address, but I appreciate you guys coming down here today to meet with us. The Asian American group, just to give you a little background on us, we've been in existence for about 20 years. Mike Vaswani in the brown is our president. For about the last 6 or 7 years, we have been doing endorsement interviews in a panel style such as this. I haven't mentioned this yet this weekend, but our endorsement success rate's hovering around 90%-ish, which is a tribute to the individuals taking time out of their schedule to come and meet with us, and which we greatly appreciate. We will be having a makeup day for the interviews for individuals who could not be present today. That probably won't happen for another 2 or 3 weeks just due to our respective schedule. Next weekend, we're doing another set of interviews for countywide, some statewide, and judicial races. Sure. And obviously, we have the Labor Day holiday. And the weekend after that, we have a banquet, our annual awards banquet, which will have between, approximately 350 to 400 people.
It's 400
will be
plus.
there.
Yeah.
Is it 400 plus now?
Yeah.
And that's set for September 13th.
Plus, is a scholarship night. We give you scholarship away. We're trying to get 1,000 turkeys this year with weekly. Everyone in downtown with Metro, 1,000 turkeys will be given this year.
Excellent.
So we probably will not get an opportunity to finalize all of our endorsements till after that banquet, so around mid-September-ish. Hopefully we want to get this done about 6 weeks or so before the actual elections, so about a month before early voting. With respect to early voting, we are also going to, the day that early voting starts, which I believe is October 18th, we'll be renting out the Harbor Palace restaurant, which is about a mile up the road here on Spring Mountain. We'll be having some free food, inviting people in, members of the community in. We will be handing out our slate cards to everyone, and we'll be asking them if they want to vote. They certainly can, because there happens to be an early voting booth within that Chinatown complex, literally 105 feet away from the front door.
Great.
So we'll be encouraging them to do their civic duty and vote ahead of time, as opposed to getting snarled on November 4th like the rest of us. In addition, we'll be taking that slate card and we'll be buying ad space in various Asian periodicals, newspapers, things of that nature, encouraging Asian Americans not only to go out and vote, but also giving them perhaps a little more direction as to who the most qualified person or people might be. So that's a little bit of background on us.
John, one more thing.
Please.
In this town, there are a lot of Asian doctors, almost a couple thousand Asian doctors. And like a Filipino doctor, he's got 15,000 patients. So he's going to be putting all our state endorsement sheets in his office. And whenever they register to go and say, this is ours, please vote for this people. So there's a lot of doctors we know.
So we do try and get...
So a lot of outreach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we try and get...
outreach we have, we do that.
We try to encourage people to vote in general. If you want to just vote completely against who we endorse, that's fine, but vote.
Vote.
Just care, exercise your right to do so, and that's really the first step. So, although we'd rather they not completely ignore us and go against us every time. But that having been said, that's background on us. Now it's time for us to get some background on you, and since we are a chivalrous group here, we're going to start with Amy. Amy, why did you decide to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Sure. Well, I went through the 11 and 13 session. I used to work for the American Lung Association as their director of policy. And so having been a public health advocate and seeing how everything worked, I got very, very interested. There was a big lack of response from our particular incumbent, and I was encouraged by people in our district to put my hat into the ring, and I figured now's the time. Why not jump into it?
Okay. And Tyrone, obviously you're already a sitting assembly person, but
I do want to share
please.
How it all happened.
Please.
Because there was a vacancy in Assembly District 17. It was probably midterm of the actual legislative session last year, and it had to go with an appointment, and so it was part of my career track to get into politics. My background has always been working within communities. I wasn't sure that it was going to happen as soon as it did, but I did, like Amy said, put my name in the hat. There were quite a bit of people that wanted the appointment, and I was the chosen candidate. I was appointed on the 80th on the 80th day of the session, which is 120 days. And so I, literally had to shift gears in my private life because, of course, it's a citizen legislature. So at my job there, and then actually moving up to Carson City, just totally hitting the ground running. I served on 4 committees: Health and Human Services, Judiciary, Legislative Operations and Elections, and Natural Resources and Mining. So I've totally embraced it. Continue to work in the community. We have our interim committees and just gearing up for the next session.
Well, you both have experience up at the legislature in varying capacities, and I'll start with Tyrone on this and then go to Amy. Based upon your experiences, clearly there's a strong sense of partisan politics up there, but we also have somewhat of a north-south divide in between northern and southern Nevada. Tyrone, and again, Amy, you'll have a chance to respond as well. What ideas do you have to try and minimize not only the partisan conflicts that exist, but also that regional or geographic conflict that also tends to complicate matters?
Right. Well, first of all, me personally, I'm always a person that likes to work with diverse groups and populations. When I was actually up in session, I think building that relationship with people, that helps bridge the gap always. So whether it's a partisan issue, if it's a north-south issue, currently working on we have a Southern Nevada platform that we're working on, and I'm actually serving as a co-chair on our governance reform committee, but also keeping those in the South aware of things that are going on so they don't feel slighted. But also we have to look at, in our state, about 72% of the population is in Southern Nevada. So really trying to have that conversation, especially when it deals with resources, depending on the issue, how do we fairly disperse resources? So again, it just goes back to being accessible, feeling free to call me, building that relationship, going from there.
Okay. Amy, your experiences.
Sure. Well, first of all, I can say it starts with, like right now during the campaign. So my district is heavily Democratic because of the voter registration numbers. So for me, I'm not just reaching out to Democrats, but I am taking a look, and it does not matter what party you're part of. I'm knocking on your door, I'm meeting you at the schools, I'm meeting you, at the mall, wherever people are. Because I feel when it really comes down to it, we live here in our community and that we want to make it a better place. So I kind of feel like when I go up there, yes, we have different ideas on how things should be accomplished, but in the end, we want to be successful. We want education to not be at the bottom of the list. We want jobs. We want people to be healthy. So I think if you look past that we can reach out to one another. As for the north and south divide, in my own personal experience, I also was the person who provided the support for a statewide tobacco coalition. And while there were definitely north-south divide that happened from there for resources and so forth, I feel because of my experience on there that I have a good understanding of the needs of the rural areas. I also have lived personally in some rural areas up in Michigan and in Missouri. So I think I could take that big city gal as well as living in rural areas and apply it to what we have here in the state, because somebody who lives in Ely or Winnemucca certainly does not have all the same concerns that we have living down here.
And just to inform the panel, I hadn't done this earlier. Amy, in a weird quirk of Nevada law, Amy is a registered Dem and is going against another registered Dem in a general election. We had talked about this briefly yesterday because I said, hey, this is coming up tomorrow, and this is weird. But Amy, could you just fill us in on the background on that, just for the panel?
Sure. So due to a quirk in Nevada law that if there's only 2 people who run, both of you are automatically through. There is no primary that takes place. So we're the only one that, it happens every couple of years in Nevada, and we just happen to be the race.
So, and since we've started these interviews 6 or 7 years ago, I've never seen it happen. Amy had mentioned it happened up north. I think it's happening up north right now.
Two Democrats.
But two Dems.
Running against.
Yes.
Well, running against one another. No Republicans.
There is no Republican.
This is weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to my race.
Yeah. No Republican, no Libertarian, no
Nobody.
Green Party.
Nobody.
So it's just the two of them.
Two of us.
So.
But
So there was no primary then?
No
correct.
primary.
No primaries. We both registered, and we were not on the ballot in the primary. Only in November.
Yeah.
Oh.
Had anyone else from any other party registered,
Right.
then the two of you would have had a primary against one another.
Yes.
She and her other Democratic
Right.
opponent. But since no one did, they're both through.
Oh.
So the Democrat is guaranteed to win this particular seat.
No matter what. but-
No matter what.
Right, yeah, either way, Dem takes it. And like I said, my district is heavily, out of the 22,000 registered voters, 12,000 are Ds, 5,000 are Rs, and then 5,000 everybody else. So,
It's blue no matter what. So.
definitely.
Um,
But when you get down to it, and eventually people compare, we both may be Ds, but we definitely fall on different spectrums of the party philosophy.
well, one question that we've been asking, since it's somewhat relevant to this, to literally what's going on right now, dovetails with you mentioning you, Amy, spent some time in rural Missouri. Civil rights issues are now back at the forefront. We had the issue in Ferguson County recently. We had the issue, we had DOMA a few years ago. We've had many other civil rights type issues raising their head as of late. What ideas do you have, and Amy, you'll go first, and then obviously Tyrone, what ideas do you have to either proactively address some of these civil rights type issues, assuming you're elected to the legislature, as opposed to just forcing all of us to react like we are doing now, we as a society are doing now with the Brown shooting?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think there's two different kinds of civil rights issues that are taking place, especially here in Nevada. One is the gay marriage issue. I definitely equate it to a civil rights issue. Boy, for as progressive as we can be in some areas, it is so hard to believe that we're behind the times. I encourage that it has already taken the vote once. It'll vote again, and then go back to the people, because I think from our tourism perspective, I think we're missing out on millions of dollars, and just as a right for people to get married. As for ethnic civil rights, we definitely seem to have a problem here with a lot of officer-involved shootings that are taking place. It's not necessarily a legislative issue, it's more a county level issue that takes place. But I think sometimes we need to take a step back and say, why are we reverting back to the 1960s? We should have come so far, and we're not. So if there's anything at the state level that can be accomplished for de-escalating some of the situations, even the things that happened out at the Bundy branch, for example, everybody's like, well, who's going to step in, and it was a federal, it was a BLM, issue, but everybody wanted everybody else to get involved, and some people did get involved with it that didn't necessarily have anything to do with what they could possibly do.
Okay. Tyrone.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say the beauty of my district is that I have an extremely diverse community. I have representation of all the ethnic groups. I mean, a pretty good representation. And so as I walk and canvass in my community, I always get an earful, about some of the issues. And it's, sometimes constituents don't know the difference of what a state legislator does versus a city council person, so on and so forth. So they feel whoever answers the door, if they're going to talk to you, they talk about the issues. Definitely we need to look at, well, first of all, I'm a relationship builder. So being proactive is to attend and being a part of, for example, the Asian American groups, being a part of the Latino groups, and definitely African American groups, working on marriage equality. Of course, as we know, that is one of our biggest issues in our community. We want to make sure that the voter rights are restored. That's a big issue right now too, because legislatively and constitutionally looking to take away some voter rights from certain groups. So we have to really keep on alert of that.
And I'm sorry to cut you off. Are you discussing, when you talk about voter rights, are you talking about Jason Frierson's bill that he's working on?
Jason has a bill.
Okay, I didn't know if you were referring to that. I didn't.
He has a bill, but I'm talking in general.
In general, okay.
You know, I just wanted to kind of talk about the different areas where we're dealing with some civil issues.
Okay.
And I'm glad that you brought it up, Amy, that it's not just always a color type of issue. There's many other types of issues where things are just not as equal as they should be. So being proactive, I think, is just always doing the relationship building and really asking certain communities what really are their issues, and trying to bridge that gap. One issue and concern that I'm working on is My Brother's Keeper. As we know, President Obama has an initiative where boys of color, if by the time that they're in third grade, if they aren't great with reading, there's some calculations going on determining potentially that they might enter into the criminal justice system. So of course we want to be proactive and we want to stop that. So we want to create the mentoring programs, which I am looking to sponsor some type of a bill in the state legislature dealing around mentorship throughout the state. So those kids can have that adult figure, or even, you know, a person that's a peer that can help them along the way. And that a lot of times deals with the black and brown issues, because those are where the data and statistics are. So really just looking at the whole gamut, and I totally agree. We try our best not to be reactionary. So when you have good working relationships, people can call you up, hey Ty, this is what's going on. Do you think we can have a community meeting? Do you think you can come and participate? Can you get our point across, so on and so forth. So.
Okay. And I tend to monopolize these questioning sessions. Anybody else want to jump in?
I want to ask you about the school system. You know, our schools are rated the kids are last in the nation, you know, and the teachers have been complaining there's no money, they're not paying enough, so they're trying to pass a tax for the teachers to get 2% increase. Mm-hmm. And how do we improve our standards instead of being the 50th state in the country? How can we bring the level up the students?
And we'll start with Tyrone and then go to Amy.
Sure, and like I said, you know, coming in on the 80th day in the session, you know, that was definitely a discussion. There was a package that we were able to approve. Again, we need to keep doing more, and like you say, we have the tax initiative on the table, and actually it's a ballot issue. One thing that's important is that I always want to get both sides to a story to really see what consequences it's going to offer. We have to really look and see what is going to, maybe one initiative is not going to be the solve all. We have a huge school district. In Southern Nevada, we have 315,000 students, and they're predicting that we're going to have about 322,000 for this coming school year. So yes, we need to look at the needs of the parents, of the students, of the administrators, and of the teachers, and of the business community. So we have to look at it all. Currently, I'm just trying to get more information to come up with a decision even for myself. So a lot of times, again, when I'm knocking on the doors, constituents, they always bring up education as one of the issues and concerns, and basically they say, hey, Assemblyman, just make sure that you're at the table, at the discussions, with our best interest, and trying to come up with a good funding formula. The funding formula was actually created in 1967, which was when I was born. So we have to really look at, and I went through the Clark County School District. I think I was a good product of the school district, but it's a different age and time that we have to really look at. So just really trying to find a decent and more appropriate way to fund education and deal with all the issues with it.
Yeah, because there's a shortage of teachers. There are about 400 teachers they short for this school year, and the schools are going to open in 2-3 weeks.
Yes. Amy, ideas that you have?
Sure. Well, I absolutely agree. The funding formula needs to be revisited. Something created back in the 1960s, and this is, 2014. That is seriously a problem. When you look at the amounts that the rules get and Southern Nevada does not get. I'm watching with interest. Right now, like the past week, they're talking about the possibility of creating more magnet schools to try to change up some of the resources, the underserved schools where there's open seats. However, I think that we have to look at some of those alternatives very cautiously, because otherwise then you start creating a two-level school system where you have the people who are in the regular public schools and who may not have transportation, may not have the resources. Then you have the kids, perhaps the top the teachers and the top kids who are getting the best grades suddenly being sucked off into these magnet schools. And so now you have a two-tier school system, and that's not where we want to go either. So while I recognize the need to have that, my own son, for example, he's at a charter school. We personally chose that because it was the best education option for him. It's a public charter. It's first come, first serve, and then it goes to a lottery system. And I really like the charter school system because they still have to do the same levels of everything, but it's how they get there. Because if you have a student who learns in a different style or a different manner, it can help those students in that particular way. I think one of the biggest hurdles we have here is, there's 140 different languages that are spoken here in Clark County, and everybody always talks, they think, oh, it's just a Hispanic issue, and it's not. Speaking Spanish is one out of those 140 languages. I think it's also time to take a look at other school districts that may also have such a diversity as us and figure out who is doing education well and look at those benchmarks, because we keep trying to recreate the wheel and it's not working and everybody's just getting more and more frustrated. So I think that there are areas we can look at, but I think we need to get down to, we've got to address the teacher shortage. Is it that barriers have been put in place by the legislature on the licensing, or what is it? Why are we not attracting teachers here? And then to address the language issue.
Okay. Kevin or Freddie?
Any thoughts on job creation?
We'll start with Amy and go to Tyrone. Any specific plans that you might have if elected to try and stimulate job growth?
I think it goes back to an educated workforce. People are not we're so dominated by the hospitality industry. For a while, 10 years ago when the bubble was happening here, it was construction jobs. But when it really comes to some of these other companies, everybody says, oh, we want to be the next Silicon Valley, for example. The tech jobs are not going to come here if the people aren't here, because it doesn't make sense for a company to relocate here and then have to import all of their workers too. They want to come to where there already is a base. So I kind of feel like if you can work and fix the problem of education and start getting more college educated people, then the businesses will come. And so that is certainly not a short-term fix by any means. But this morning when I was reading the paper, I was absolutely appalled when they were talking about the statistics about students that are entering UNLV and for CSN, and how many of them, over 50% of them, have to take remedial classes. So we're saying you're a high school graduate, but now you have to spend the next 2 years in college retaking your math and reading before you ever touch a college class. So then all of a sudden now you've got kids who are not graduating for 6, 7, 8 years, or just get discouraged and drop out completely. So educate the workforce, and then the businesses will come.
Should you say we should encourage more, say, vocational or technical schools here? Because those are the people that come from the workforce, from people who are vocational and technically qualified to do jobs.
I think to a certain degree, yes. Not everything requires a 4-year degree or higher.
Right.
However, for example, like our construction jobs, the people who are going to be your electricians or your AC repair guys, there's only going to be so many of those jobs. So vocational is good to a certain point if the market is there for it. And our market's pretty flooded with the people who came here before, so I think you have to find a balance of it. But then, for example, healthcare, could some of those people be directed into some of the healthcare field that require like a 2-year or a certificate program? Absolutely.
Okay. Tyrone.
Well, currently, and I'm very fortunate to have been appointed to serve on the Governor's Workforce Investment Board. And so with that, we get reports and data on the key sectors for Nevada, and so now that we know the sectors, we need to prepare our workforce for those sectors. So if there's certain training so people can be competitive, we need to do that. One of the things that we did in the legislature, approving the fuel index tax, and so by that, it's increasing 9,000 jobs in the community. So far, and we get monthly updates, so far about 2,000 people have been put back to work. That's another thing that I want to say. In my district alone, I have a lot of people that times really fell hard on them because a lot of people are in the labor industry and other industries, and they're really just trying to get back to work. So really just working with that, working with the businesses, whether it's small, medium or large, also trying to instill and create entrepreneurs. So I've had a few workshops in my community to try to get that spark in people's hearts to actually open up their own businesses, but also knowing all the avenues that you need to know about when you do open up a business. And with that, it will employ a few people here and there, and then it also helps the economic development within our district. Let me just share with you in Assembly District 17, we have one of the highest foreclosure rates. We don't have a lot of businesses and commerce in our area, and so to really spark that interest in people is, those are some of the ideas. So I'm just really excited to be on that Governor's Workforce Investment Board, because right there, that's where a lot of the key work happens within the state.
Well, talking about business, I was once as a business now, and it's so difficult to apply for a business license every time. And this is what I heard from people coming here who wants to establish a business, because like the city has a different code law, the county has a different code law, and they go back and forth on these places to just get their business going. Why is that? I mean, is there a way that there could be one system only for the whole state, whether it's city or county, in applying a business, to make it difficult and make it easier for people coming here to just say, go to one place, one building or whatever, and apply for their business instead of directing to all different places now. Oh, we're city, we don't do that. You go to the county. The county says, oh, you go there. Oh, it's not on this area here, you go to that place because you live in that area, that's where you go.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because previously when I brought up the governance reform subcommittee that I'm working on here in Southern Nevada, we've convened all of our business license directors in all the jurisdictions, and we've also had discussions with the Secretary of State's office to really, there's a business portal that they're talking about, and they have been doing tremendous work and actually looking at bill drafts on how to continue to make that process very seamless, because we want to look out for the customer. And so if that business, they have some business in Clark County, the majority's in North Las Vegas, or so on and so forth, how do we make that just a more simplified process for that business owner, so we don't lose them, and so they're in compliance. Right. Because a lot of times business owners find out that they're in non-compliance when they do something wrong, when they don't feel like they did anything wrong. They felt like, well, I got my business license in this jurisdiction, but then they find out later that they really should have gotten it in another jurisdiction as well. So it's looking very positive that we're going to have a very seamless approach coming real soon. And like I said, it's just been great to see the leads of the business license departments working closely together.
And Amy, any thoughts on streamlining the licensure process
Sure. I definitely think, I remember one time I heard a story about a locksmith who couldn't cross over because he was only licensed in like North Las Vegas and Las Vegas, but if you left your keys in the car and you were in Henderson, he couldn't come help you. And he, you know, it was a whole story about how frustrating it was. And he's like, sorry, but you can call my buddy. I just didn't want to go through the third time of having to get licensed. So definitely, I think some of it, perhaps the local entities are looking at it as a moneymaker because, you know, of their budgets. I mean, let's be honest. So I think streamlining it and making it not as frustrating for business owners would be a great goal.
Such cynicism.
It is.
Goodness.
I mean, how could you attract people from other states and they come here and says, this is what you need, you go here, you go there, I mean, that's, you're on this district, and it's
But
just...
if you look at other large metropolitan areas that have like I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Well, I mean, there are a multitude of suburbs that are there, plus, you know, Chicago proper. And business owners did not, like a locksmith, would not have to get 50 different licenses. They got one.
Right.
So, I mean, there are definitely areas we could look at as role models.
Well, we've actually